Are smartphones making an entire generation more anxious, depressed, and socially disconnected? Jonathan Haidt thinks so. In his latest book, The Anxious Generation, he dives deep into the consequences of social media, smartphone dependence, and the loss of childhood independence. But is his argument convincing? And what solutions does he offer? Let's break it down. Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist and author of The Coddling of the American Mind, returns with another thought-provoking book. The Anxious Generation argues that over the last decade, we have witnessed an unprecedented rise in mental health issues among young people, especially those born after 1995, the so-called iGen or Gen Z. And according to Haidt, the culprit? The smartphone revolution. Through extensive research, Haidt presents data that links the rise of anxiety, depression, and loneliness to the explosion of social media and screen time. But let's dig deeper into his arguments. Haidt calls this shift the great rewiring of childhood. Between 2010 and 2015, childhood changed dramatically. Instead of exploring the world physically, kids started living in a digital playground. Social media, online interactions, and endless scrolling replaced face-to-face connections and outdoor play. This rewiring of childhood, Haidt suggests, disrupted the natural development of resilience, independence, and emotional regulation, making kids more fragile and anxious. Haidt presents compelling evidence that excessive social media use, especially platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat, has been a key factor in the rise of anxiety and depression, particularly among teenage girls. He points to studies showing how comparison culture, cyberbullying, and the addictive nature of these platforms create a toxic environment. One of the most alarming statistics he shares is the spike in self-harm and depression. Among young girls, unlike boys who tend to externalize their struggles through activities, girls internalize social comparison, making them more vulnerable to the negative effects of social media. Beyond screens, Haidt also highlights how modern parenting has contributed to the problem. Increased safety concerns, overprotective parenting, and the decline of unsupervised outdoor play have left kids without the chance to build independence. He calls this the play deficit, where free play, risk-taking, and social problem-solving are all disappearing. Without these experiences, kids grow up more anxious, more dependent on adults, and less able to cope with adversity. The combination of excessive screen time and the decline of independent play has, in Haidt's view, created a perfect storm for mental health crises. So, what's the way out? Haidt doesn't just diagnose the problem. He offers solutions. He suggests that kids should not get smartphones before the age of 14 and should avoid social media until at least 16. He calls for a collective societal shift to delay early exposure to these digital distractions. Bringing back free play is another key solution. Haidt advocates for letting kids explore the world, take risks, and develop real-world problem-solving skills without constant adult supervision. He also proposes changes in schools, emphasizing more in-person social interactions, limiting non-screen-based learning, and teaching kids how to navigate the digital world responsibly. However, some Mura critics argue that correlation doesn't always mean causation. Just because social media use increased alongside mental health issues doesn't mean it's the only factor. Economic inequality, climate anxiety, and political uncertainty also contribute to rising anxiety levels among young people. So, is The Anxious Generation worth reading? Absolutely. Haidt presents a well-researched, urgent argument about the mental health crisis facing young people today. Even if one doesn't fully agree with his conclusions, the book Tao sparks an important conversation.